Star Trek has been beaming its way into fans' hearts for over 50 years, reinventing itself time and time again.
1966, 79 episodes, about 30 good ones.
Most fans think they know everything there is to know about Starfleet's finest, but sometimes fans absorb ideas about Trek from pop culture that simply aren't true. So, what's real? What's just another invasive mind probe? And what are just a bunch of lies told by Q? Here are some false facts about Star Trek you always thought were true. Beam me up, Scotty. If there is one catchphrase Star Trek is best known for, it's beam me up, Scotty.
Beam me up, Scotty!
Despite the prominence of this phrase, and even actor James Doohan using it as the title of his autobiography, the simple truth is that Kirk never said it. At least, he never said it exactly.
Beam us up. You may beam us aboard. Beam me up.
You'll never find the exact phrase, beam me up, Scotty, in any official Star Trek show or movie, but it does occasionally pop up in Star Trek novels and other media. This misquoted phrase can join the one never actually uttered by Data's favourite detective, Sherlock Holmes. Elementary, my dear Watson. Next Generation was the first sequel. Most fans regard Star Trek: The Next Generation as the first legit sequel to the original Star Trek, both in spirit and continuity. However, it turns out that there was an entire galaxy of adventures that plenty of people were simply unaware of, until it popped up on their Netflix queue. Years after the original Star Trek stopped producing new episodes, there was an animated series of completely new adventures, voiced by almost the entire original cast. Most of the episodes are even considered as part of the Star Trek story canon, with later live-action Trek episodes referencing animated events. The animated series lasted 2 seasons and was nearly replaced a few years later by another live-action series called Star Trek Phase 2. Instead, Paramount determined their pilot would make a better movie, and this, combined with their runaway success of Star Wars at movie theaters at the time, sent Star Trek to the big screen instead. Fans forgot about the cartoons and the series that almost was, leaving The Next Generation as the third planned sequel series rather than the first. Picard followed orders. One of the reasons that fans so passionately debate the superior captain, Kirk versus Picard, is that the characters seem completely different, and that's no mistake. Picard is quiet and diplomatic in scenarios where Kirk would be a loud cowboy, and Kirk would probably never discuss Shakespeare with an android when he could share a stiff drink with a country doctor instead. Because of this pointed contrast, many people simply assume that Picard is a stickler for the rules, especially the main rule of Starfleet, the Prime Directive, which basically states that you should never seriously interfere with aliens who aren't as advanced as you. Basically, it doesn't take any nonsense.
Sir, I know this may finish me as an acting ensign, but—
Shut up, Wesley!
But believe it or not, Picard is way more reckless than Kirk. Take the season 4 episode, The Drumhead, for example.
Would it surprise you to learn that you have violated the Prime Directive a total of 9 times since you took command of the Enterprise? I must say, Captain, it surprised the hell out of me.
9 times. And he was just getting started. This includes saving hapless Wesley Crusher from a death sentence for breaking a greenhouse on a planet of aliens with bad hair, and allowing Data to save his alien pen pal's planet from complete destruction. So, much like Kirk, Picard doesn't usually hesitate to bend the rules when he feels there's more at stake than bureaucracy. Spock is emotionless. Because Spock is a Vulcan driven entirely by logic, he often presents himself as being free of emotions. Except he's totally not. Part of the reason is that Spock is actually half human, and as you can probably tell by the comments on this video, humans are an emotional mess. But in truth, Vulcans have very intense emotions that they choose to bury because of their beliefs. Even Spock's all-Vulcan half-brother Sybok crusaded against Vulcan emotional suppression. As for Spock, there was the time he accidentally got high from an alien plant and had an emotional hookup with one of the natives. Another time he freaks out because he realizes he enjoyed eating meat.
I'm behaving disgracefully. I have eaten animal flesh and I've enjoyed it. What is wrong with me?
Later, he cries softly when he realizes that the intelligent space probe V'Ger is experiencing the emptiness that Spock once felt. So, contrary to popular belief, Spock totally gets the feels. It's a theme that would be repeated with characters in nearly every Trek series, from Voyager's 7 of 9 to The Next Generation's Data. The first interracial kiss. The original Star Trek was bold in a number of ways, and it is often credited for a particular landmark, the first interracial kiss on American television, occurring in the episode Plato's Stepchildren. The plot involved the crew being turned into puppets by powerful space jerks who could make them do anything, and one of the things they do is force Kirk and Uhura to kiss. Nervous NBC executives shot several alternate takes so they wouldn't offend their southern viewers and affiliates, but as the story goes, William Shatner reportedly started making goofy faces to ruin the alternate takes, forcing the studio to air the kiss. Was it historic? Yes, but it wasn't the first. That honor goes to a TV special called Movin' with Nancy, which aired a few months before the Star Trek episode and had a number of memorable cameos, including Sammy Davis Jr., who gives Nancy Sinatra a kiss at the end of his scene. Nobody uses money. Casual fans generally believe that there is no money in the 23rd and 24th centuries, mostly because of the words of the captains themselves.
The economics of the future are somewhat different. You see, money doesn't exist in the 24th century.
Could we have that to go, please?
Sure. Who gets the bad news?
Don't tell me they don't use money in the 23rd century.
Well, we don't.
Seems pretty clear cut, right? Except plenty of episodes of Star Trek prove this wrong. Kirk offers to pay some grubby miners to settle a dispute, and the crew later buys tribbles with what seems to be some form of currency.
10 credits apiece is a very reasonable price. Now you can see for yourself how much the lovely little lady appreciates the finer thing.
1 credit apiece.
About 100 years later, Dr. Crusher casually buys some crap from a marketplace and sends the bill to the ship. Later, the Federation participates in an auction for a stable wormhole, and the whole crew on Deep Space Nine regularly buys drinks, rents holosuites, and gambles at Quark's bar. So maybe it's safer to say that Earth and even the Federation is a post-scarcity society, but applying that idea to the whole galaxy, well, that's just bad business. Troi was always an empath. In addition to making fans' hearts flutter by wearing a variety of non-regulation uniforms, ship counselor Deanna Troi is an empath. She's able to read the emotions of others. It seemed perfect that the ship's resident shrink was able to directly connect with people's feelings, so most fans assumed that this was the power she was originally designed to have. The truth is a bit more complicated. Originally, Troi was meant to have full telepathy, which is clear in the pilot episode.
Can you still sense my thoughts?
In later episodes, Troi's powers were changed to give her empathic abilities, partially because actress Marina Sirtis disliked the emotional soliloquies that she had to recite because she was able to read people so clearly. Having someone who could completely read minds also presented storytelling issues, since it's tough to maintain a mystery when one character can read everybody else's thoughts.
I'm sensing someone tying me down to a bed?
It's probably nothing. We should probably just change course.
Nonetheless, the showrunners struggled with working around her powers. Writers dropped her from a few first season episodes and nearly cut the character altogether. That wasn't the only bullet Troi dodged. Originally, her character was supposed to have a few extra breasts. Seven was just eye candy. When 7 of 9 first showed up on Star Trek Voyager, many assumed her casting was something of a ratings ploy. After all, they were essentially replacing the benign and boring alien Kes with a blonde bombshell in a skin-tight cat suit. Even Kate Mulgrew, who played Captain Catherine Janeway, initially thought that the role wasn't meant to be much more than a sexy gimmick inserted into what was essentially the most explicitly feminist Star Trek show. Ultimately, however, 7 of 9 played out as a very positive female role model, often rebuffing unwanted male attention. She becomes an instrumental part of the crew, helping them establish actual communication with Starfleet, and often serves as a powerful counterpoint to Janeway's perspective. And her entire story tackles the message of actualization and individual identity as she shakes off the trauma from being forced into the Borg collective and becomes her own person with her own strength and values. Ultimately, the character that many dismissed as simply being sexy and exploitative ended up being one of Trek's most inspiring women. Of course, while we're on the subject of inspiring women, Captain Kirk, ladies' man. Casual fans thinking about the original Trek series seem to think that every episode involved green women or short-skirted Starfleet ladies throwing themselves at the feet of the famous Captain Kirk. In fact, the green Orion slave girl that everyone thinks of as Kirk's most notorious conquest, she never even met Kirk. That scene featured Captain Christopher Pike in Star Trek's original pilot episode, which was written and filmed before Kirk's creation. Sure, another one came along later, but he really wasn't having it.
Keep your hands off Kirk, you treacherous thing.
This misconception of Kirk as a straight-up horn dog is so firmly ingrained in fans' minds that it was played up by the Trek reboot, in which Kirk ogles the requisite green woman, hits on Uhura, and even gets distracted by some pretty faces on the Starfleet Academy quad. Viewing Kirk's actual adventures tells a different story. There were times that he flirted with women in order to get vital information, but Kirk rarely took it farther than that. In fact, Kirk only had romantic encounters in about 25% of the original Trek episodes, and maybe some of the books, and possibly that Tribble in the cartoon, and definitely a few times in the movies.
What is it with you, anyway?
Look, the point is, Kirk is hardly the space pimp people remember. Now, Commander Riker, on the other hand. Thanks for watching. Click the grunge icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.